Okay, so we're at the point now where we have sine 75 equals opposite divided by x. What's also useful is to recognize that we will be able to work out that this is 38 degrees in here. The reason why we know this is 38 degrees, because all the angles in a triangle must add up to 180 degrees. I'm not going to go into great detail as to why that is at the moment, but we can. You can probably have a sense of it by being aware that if I was to take these angles in this angle here, this angle here, and this angle here, let's draw that last one with a little bit more grace. Oh my God, that is worse. And then I said the Lord's name in vain as well. There we go. Right. So these exterior angles, if you were to collapse these points, this point, and this point down to a pin, you'd notice that you would create a perfect circle. That plus that plus that will create one full circle. This is probably not going to aid in the discussion that much, but it might be worth just considering that for a circle, the total angle needs to be 360 degrees. If I were to take the points, I'm going to take that point here, this point here, and this point here, and collapse it down to one tiny point in the middle, you would have this plus this would add to 360. Because they've been, when you open up the triangle, because they are split into three, they must be 120, 240, 360, so 120 each. If they are 120 each, then these angles need to make up, this is for a perfect triangle, of course, perfect equilateral triangles. These angles need to add up to 180, so this would be 120 in here if it were a perfect equilateral triangle. This would be 120 out here. This would also be 120 here. This would be 120 here to make that full circular motion around that shape, that triangle. And so, of course, if that's 120 and it's on a straight line, that must be 60. This must be 60, and this must be 60, meaning that the angles in a triangle, 60, 120, 180, angles in a triangle add up to 180. But you'd say, but this is not an equilateral triangle, or whatever language you wish to utilize. Instead, what it is that whatever movement you do, as long as it's called a triangle, if this increases by a certain value of 75, or this to 75, or this increases by a certain value, plus 7 degrees here, plus 15 degrees instead of 60, then this side will decrease equivalently so that they always add up to 180. But enough of that. We can go into that detail, and I do apologize to digress there. The idea really is that these three angles always add up to 180 degrees. So I could work out this by doing 180 minus 75 minus 67, and I get 38 degrees. This is 38 degrees. We are aware that sine 75 is equal to O over x. Multiply both sides by x gives you x sine 75 equals 0. Let's now tackle this right part of the triangle. I'm looking at this part of the triangle now, this side here. I'm giving it some pinkage, if that's a word. I don't like that word. I probably will probably want to use a different one going forward. But if I'm going to give it some pinkage, the idea is that for this triangle here with an angle of 38 degrees, I'm going to use my lovely trusted arrow to finish this conversation off. Opposite that 38 degrees is this line here. The longest side here, 9.1 centimeters, the hypotenuse. I can then say that sine A, given that 38 degrees, just out of tradition in this conversation alone, so I don't know if it's possible to suggest this tradition, but it is. For now, we can argue about my discourse another time. It is definitely far from perfect. 38 is the angle A. Sine A is therefore O. Opposite divided by hypotenuse, 9.1. Multiply both sides by 9.1, you get 9.1 sine A equals O. Since this is the thing, we're getting to that point now. We're going to come to the conclusion. Don't want an arrow. Let's get back to that lovely little rectangle. Since this is equal to O, and since the other side of the triangle, x sine 75, is equal to O, then we can conclude that x sine 75 is equal to 9.1 sine A. We know what A is. Like I said, it's 180 minus 75 minus 67, which we calculate was 38. That's what's been implemented in here. I'm then going to move on to suggest divide both sides by sine 75. Sine 75 divided by sine 75 would be 1. Sine 38 over sine 75 will be what's on the right hand side. And have this equation here. You type that in your calculator and to whatever significant figure you would like. I've chosen 2. Check it out for yourself. Sometimes there might be lies in these tutorials. Be careful. X is equal to 5.8 to 2 significant figures. And that 5.8, let's analyze this situation. If that's 9.1, this feels about right, although intuition is not always the case in mathematics. Of course, as a result of the number of logical steps you can end up doing. 9.1 centimeters. This is meant to be around 5.8. Thank you for staying with me if you did. Have a good afternoon, evening, or morning, wherever you are.